Welcome to part three of our ongoing series, The Escalation Trap, with Professor Robert Pape from the University of Chicago here on At the Water's Edge. It's the 7th of April, 2026. Let's get started. Professor Pape has claimed that U.S. forces getting involved on the ground in Iran could trigger stage three in his escalation trap, a red line that America could not walk back from. Has the recent rescue of a U.S. pilot in Iran by American Special Operations Forces on the ground crossed that red line? We'll find out. And what happens after stage three? How does the entire world order start to shift and bend around the outcome of this conflict? We'll start to find out today. Thank you so much for everyone who's been with us. If you could like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend, it would mean a lot for getting the show out to more people. With that, let's get to our conversation with Professor Robert Pape and his update on the current state of the war with Iran. Well, good morning, Professor, and how are you today?
I am terrific. It is a great, glorious day here in Chicago. I wish I could say as much for other parts of the world, but it is a pleasure, Scott, to be with you and your audience again.
Thank you. It is not so great here in the Syracuse area. I woke up today and there was snow on the ground in
Huh.
April. Gotta love it. And I'm sure that's what you meant by interesting stuff going on in other parts of the world. So,
That's right.
but on to Iran. So, some quick highlights from the past week. We've got, let's see here. President Trump is threatening to start blowing up all of their energy infrastructure tonight if they don't reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And for folks listening, we're recording this Monday morning. It'll be out Tuesday morning. Um, Iran continues to hit oil infrastructure in the area. The UAE and Saudi Arabia want us to go full ham on Iran and completely remove the government and finish the job, whatever that means. Iran's coordinating with Hezbollah to strike targets in Lebanon in advance of Israel's invasion there. And then we finally have confirmed U.S. ground forces for the first time in Iran, conducting a rescue operation for an F-15E Eagle that was shot down with two crew members. Rescue has been successful, thankfully, but we had previously talked about trigger for stage three in the escalation trap, the escalation ladder, ground forces in Iran. We finally have that for the first time. So starting off the bat, does this incursion of U.S. Special Operations personnel, although temporary, is this enough to trigger stage three?
No, it's not. Let's just be upfront about that. It's not a combat. What stage three is a combat operation to take and hold ground. It is about territorial control. And I have tried to underscore that, Scott, in the very first post I put on the escalation trap. It's called the smart bomb trap. A few days before the bombing, stage three, I tried to underscore would be about limited territorial control, where limited needs to be understood in scare quotes because that would naturally unfold. What you saw here are their rescue missions, but not really about anything related to territory. This is a quick in, quick out. And by the way, tactically, this episode, you saw so many of the elements of the war on display. You saw the tactical brilliance involved with the fact that the pilot followed his Sears training to the letter, and it really matters here. I knew some of the pilots that were down in the first Gulf War. And it might come as a surprise to listeners to know, but they tell you not to go to a house, even if you think it's an abandoned house, because bad guys might be in there. Well, actually, that does sometimes happen. You're really hungry after a few days, and sure enough, bad guys were in there. So in the first Gulf. Anyway, so that's an issue there. But also, you saw the Iranian people. It looks like just literally the people shooting down the helicopters, or shooting at the helicopters to bring them down. Now, the Iranian military undoubtedly brought down the F-15, probably with an S-300. That's a kind of fancy, agile surface to air missile. But the thing that was so also on display was just the ordinary people shooting at the helicopters. And this is just a sign of what we've been talking about before, that this bombing is not going to create more anger against the Iranian regime. It's going to create anger against the Americans. And this is going to happen more and more just with ordinary people, because it's the Americans who are creating all this harm now to them directly. So you really saw in so many ways. And the bottom line is that also strategically did not change the trajectory of the war. So this was all the different elements were on display in these rescue operations.
Yeah, I was reading the news and there was this interesting historical parallel because I'm reading it. Okay, so it's SEAL Team 6, it's Delta Force, it's 24th STS. It's they don't say it really, but it's all the elements of JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command,
Yeah.
and it's Joint Special Operations Command flying into Iran. They've got aircraft that end up getting stuck in the desert. They've got a plan to mitigate that. They continue mission. They rescue the Americans and they get out successfully. And it's almost poetic because JSOC, that same organization, was formed as a result of the 1980s failure to rescue hostages in Iran because aircraft got stuck in the desert.
Yep,
There was
yep, yeah,
logistical
Desert One,
challenges.
yep, never forget.
Yeah, and so part of me looked at them like, man, it is so incredible that we've come so far that we are actually able to pull this off. And then part of me is like, but it still doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to change
Well,
anything.
it
It's like
doesn't
we're getting
matter
good at
in
the
the
wrong
it
things.
doesn't matter. We wanna give we wanna keep, emphasizing that as the strategic failure unfolds, and it's gonna
Hmm.
continue to unfold, and we'll get back to President Trump's, words here in just a moment. We need to really just, though, do more than we did during the Vietnam War, here, which is to explain that, the military itself, I don't mean the leaders of the military, I mean the military itself is performing admirably with incredible courage here all the way through, doing above and beyond everything that's being asked of it. And that's not to say the leaders are living up to this, but we need to understand this. This is probably, Scott, going to go negatively here as this unfolds, and that's one of the reasons I'm stressing the military proficiency here along the way, because we saw in the Vietnam War what happens when you lose a war. What happens when the country loses a war? They take it out on the military. They shouldn't. I'm not saying they should or anything like that. In fact, you're seeing the opposite. But what this is simply a huge tendency that is going to happen because, as everybody knows, victory's got 1,000 fathers.
Hmm.
Failure is an orphan, and what you're going to see is that blame game, and the military is going to get hit pretty enormously, which is just another of the big reasons not to have gone down this road. You don't set the military up for failure, and it's not good enough that they have good intentions and they're excellent. I'm sorry to say, the public here, big parts of the public, they're going to be looking for blame, and the big hunk of it, even though it shouldn't, will fall on the military.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring up military post Vietnam because one of the key changes that the U.S. military did post Vietnam, they were the all volunteer force was forced upon the military. A lot of folks in DoD didn't necessarily want that to happen. They were worried that it would separate the warfighter from the American public and that the military would be used in a more irresponsible fashion over time. One of the things they did to mitigate that was that they took all the logistical capacity in the Army
Yep.
and they stuck it in the reserves and National Guard. So that the active force is incapable of sustaining any combat operations without mobilizing the reserves and National Guard. And I was looking over the weekend, and we are seeing more reserve and guard units start to get mobilization orders or to be put on standby for mobilization.
The
And that to
Nevada
me is,
Air National Guard is a case in point. Very
yep.
recently, that's exactly right. And then this is what you're also seeing, Scott, and this will get us back to the president's discussion. Is something several big things happened this week beyond these operations. Number one was with President Trump's speech. This became the what I'm calling the end of the short war illusion. So before
Mm,
President Trump spoke, and in fact, you'll know that in the run up to his speech, there were all these hopes he was going to call the war off, essentially, that it was a short war. He would find a way to call it off. We didn't really know what that was going to look like, but there were hopes, and this was across the spectrum. You found people in all different parts of the political system here hoping for this. Well, in his speech, he didn't call off the war, he extended the war. Now, he didn't say how long it would be extended, but we didn't know. That was not the big deal. The big deal was this is not ending. That was the end of the short war illusion. So, all the things I've been saying, and now you're going to be paying more attention to it, these logistical movements that I've been saying are so important because they are the sustainment operation for long ground operations and so forth. Um, these will take on a different impact because it's not in the context of, well, the president's going to, of course, call this off, right? No, it's the president is not going to call this off. It's going to go on. And everybody has now got a somewhat different view, which is we all know he's not calling it off. We still might have a little bit of hope left, tiny bit
Yeah.
in there, but mainly the short war illusion for just about everybody is we're just about out of gas on that, and that is going to then create a different context for what his bombing threats are. So now, of course, he's brought back the bombing threats, and he made this 10 days ago, and he extended the deadline. Of course, he can extend the deadline again, but as this back and forth goes with these deadlines, this is not in the context of us hoping the war is really going to be over. That's just not there. That's just not there. The fact is, we're now settling in, and the expectations are really forming. You saw this in Jamie Dimon's discussion. You may not have seen it, but Jamie Dimon is the head of J.P. Morgan, the biggest, essentially, bank in the world. It's like the Harvard of banks, just to
Yeah.
kind of put it in some context of why people pay attention to him. And he is now put out a newsletter. He was on Fox, and he's talking. He's still trying to be very pro. He's not trying to be a lefty of any sort, but he is explaining interest rates are going up,
Wow.
and this means this is what I'm saying. The short war illusion is gone, and as it's gone, all the actors in the system, from the smallest enlist, the lowliest enlisted, up to the upper reaches of our government, all governments, banks, etc. Their expectations now are shifting. And that is itself a mega big deal that is going to matter, much the way when expectations shift on inflation. So when you think inflation is going to be 2% a year, you're happy with a 3% pay raise, which, by the way, hint, hint, is as little as we get at the university. But still, the fact is, when inflation is at 5, 6% a year, you're not happy with that 3% pay raise. You think you've just been punished. And that's because of the expectations I'm explaining here. And so this will be the same sort of thing, Scott. And it's disheartening to me because I'm really trying to stop to getting this point. But that said, we're gonna have to accept that we are in a new reality, and it will have some much bigger consequences. So we should talk about the bombing here in some detail,
Mhm.
but then there's another bigger consequence, Scott, just to put on your list of things we talk about today that I want to point out because it's coming after the short war illusion.
Gotcha. Now, you've talked previously that, bombing energy infrastructure has no record of success anywhere for anything. Why do you think that President Trump is still floating this as a threat? Like, who's pushing this inside the administration? Where do these
Well,
ideas
we
come
need to
from, or is it just bluster?
Yeah, a couple things to say. And I want to give some credit to the best thesis, the best paper ever written on this, is by Thomas Griffith, who wrote it as a lieutenant colonel in the military. He was a guy who was shot down over Iraq in an F-15. So he was at the School of Advanced Air Power Studies here. He came in as a quote student. These are the kind of students I had. Okay. Really quite stunning. And he wrote the best paper on electric power targeting ever. And I've put it out on my X account and you can just see it for free. It's on, you see, you don't have to pay any money for it. And I put the whole thing out, and people should go in and read this paper. It's really excellent. And what he shows is he covers all the cases of electric power targeting by the United States Air Force. And it has been a favorite target set, by the way. This is because it's a giant target set. These are big, out in the open, above ground installations. You can't bury these electric power, and you can bury the lines, of course, but not the actual generator and the hulls, 500 feet underground. So this is always has been almost, from really World War II days, the favorite target of the Air Force because it's so big. And it's when I was taught for the Air Force in the 90s, John Warden, he was the big leader of the Leadership Decapitation School, which isn't just about leadership decapitation. That's the center of his five ring theory. Well, the third ring is infrastructure, infrastructure and electric power, big part. Well, he brought in no classification. He brought in to help teach us how to do electric power targeting, business people from the electric power industry, and they walked us through. So I have more than you might think from a professor teaching here, understanding of the difference between hitting the transformer and hitting the generator halls and what that really means in terms of how long the power goes out. And we, if we want to get into that, we can do that. But it's not just from guessing or so forth. It's because he was bringing people in to teach us how to take down electric power in different countries around the world for real in the 90s, not just at a read a few paragraphs about it. And so I know a fair bit about that. And Tom wrote this brilliant paper because this was quite clear. This was going to be a big target set for the leadership decapitation school, which is, again, not just narrowly about killing or toppling leaders. There's a wider theory here you're seeing unfold. And I would say that theory, probably to this day, has sway about, with about a third of those, at least in the Air Force and others. It's not, I don't know if it's really right to say it's the majority position. There's probably no real, as you know, you've served,
Mhm.
saying what's a majority position or not is a little, when people say the military thinks this, well, that usually and we could all tell, even I could tell these stories about
Yeah,
that's misunderstanding
it's a
the
bold
different.
statement.
It's a bold
It's a
statement,
bold
right?
statement.
But nonetheless, that doesn't mean the military doesn't think anything. So the
Yeah.
idea they have no thought, that's a complete misnomer as well. So what you're seeing here, I think, is the rise of the leadership decapitation school. It's not gone away. It's
Okay.
morphing into the five ring theory of Warden. And they're now going to go after the next of the rings. And the idea here, Scott, is it what Warden is trying to do, or what this idea is trying to do, is it's trying to set up the conditions for future toppling of the military, and also for of the, I'm sorry, of the regime, and also to weaken the military secondarily if there is any ground operation. So the idea here is that target set is supposed to have two of these effects at the same time, kind of two parallel effects, if you would. Well, and so in Tom Griffith's paper, he's analyzing these different effects, right? So this is, again, all completely transparent in this paper written in the 90s. And he lays out and he shows, well, it's never toppling the regime. It's not setting up those conditions. It is harming civilians. You're going to kill when you knock out electric power in a country. And just like if we lost power in the United States, or you lose power in Syracuse, you're not going to the hospital here. They might have a little backup power generation, but they're not going to have a backup power generation for long. So dialysis goes away. Surgeries, heart surgeries are going to go away. Those people are going to die because if you knocked it out in Syracuse, you could go to some other centers. You could maybe even go to Erie. I mean, I know the area. So I was
Mhm.
born in Erie, Pennsylvania. So you could go to some other areas. However, if you knock out the whole northeastern region, or you knock out the whole electric power in the entire United States here, within a few weeks, not a day, but within 3 or 4 weeks, death is going to occur. And it's going to occur because all of those medical services, and then you're going to get other issues that are going to affect the young and the old. And then he's also hitting the bridges. Notice he's talking about hitting the bridges. Favorite Warden target. Another right out of the Warden five rings. Why are you hitting the bridges? To starve the population. So what you are doing here, it also, you're hoping to make it a little bit easier for a possible military coup here. But the bottom line is you're trying to inconvenience, it's called, to the population, with the idea they'll see themselves as better off with a different regime, and so they'll be more open to it. By the way, this all comes from Ed Litvak's theory on coups. So Ed Litvak in the early 70s. So your listeners here are often, a lot of people are pummeling me, give me readings, because I'm a professor. Go read Litvak's book on coup d'etat, and you're going to see what's his target set in the appendix. It's going to look a lot like the five ring theory, because this is about coups, how you're going to do it. And now, if you have on the ground, what Litvak, of course, had was the Bible for how to do coups. If you're a colonel like Gaddafi,
Hmm.
okay, so it's rumored that some of the actual coups by the coups actually just followed Litvak's book, okay, literally got it underlined everything to do. But that's on the ground, Scott. So anyway, this is just a deeper dive into these actual issues that I think your audience will value and recognize, but also then right away start to see the limits of this with air power, the
Hmm.
bombing, and what happens is the military doesn't use all that. It's not like when they're fighting, they in a field army, they have a long extension cord and they plug it. That's not what's happening. So, but they do need some electricity, and of course, but they have the first call. So any electricity that's left will be first call to the military, and they do have backup power generation in a lot of situations. It's much more extensive than the civilian here, and so this is what Tom Griffith is laying out in this 100-page thesis. He's really going into this in detail so you can really see what are the actual consequences. And yes, there might be some tiny limits on the military eventually. But the bottom line is almost all the costs are absorbed by the civilians, either up front or over time. And that makes them incredibly angry, and
Hmm.
these arguments we're going to make, or if President Trump makes, see, this is why you should topple your government. They're going to say, yeah, that's why we should topple the American government.
Yeah.
That they're not going to go the direction that the bombing side always thinks they should go.
Yeah, and so you're laying this out, and the first thoughts that are coming to my mind is that when we do an assessment on whether or not going after a particular target is worth a particular amount of civilian damage, and there's actually risk tables like bad guy X is worth 25 civilian casualties.
Yep, that's
We
right.
find this person like Ayatollah's in the house with his granddaughter, whatever,
Yep, it's
worth it.
worth a lot of casualties for that. Yep, no,
Yeah.
I understand. Yep.
So, but I'm thinking this: if we go this at scale, if from my understanding, there's no robust evidence that these strategies work towards their intended objectives, and we have enough case studies so that these things have been studied in some detail. And there's a principle of military necessity in war. So, if a reasonable military strategist would look at the evidence and determine that these strategies are not likely to produce the desired outcome in any state, this strategy that expedites harm to civilians almost seems like a de facto war crime to be
Oh,
pursuing
yeah,
at
this will
scale.
definitely go down in yeah, the
Okay.
American public, of course, will not hold our we the public will have a fair bit of tolerance for our leaders killing, other civilians, and that's just true
Mhm.
of all the publics. It's not unique to the American public. We're not more we're not less or more moral than anybody else. A lot of people think we should be, and we are, but we're not. And so the fact is that war crime here, the real thing the American public needs to hear, though, is that this harm is what is generates the energy for payback.
Mm.
So that payback now, right now, Iran is threatening payback against the Gulf states here, but over time, their publics may demand that's not good enough. We want
Gotcha.
payback. I mean, the Iranian people will say, we want payback about the people who are doing this to us. And that's those Americans and then Americans themselves. And I know because I teach, I see this all the time, but I didn't vote for Donald Trump. No, I'm sorry. We elected him twice. No,
Yeah.
that argument fell flat now on November 2024. So
Mhm.
all the progressive liberals can say, well, don't take my airplane down out of the sky. I'm a progressive liberal. I voted for, so sorry. No, that's not how the war is going to play itself out. They're not going to go through and they're going to go through voting records and say, we're only going to target Americans who voted for Donald Trump. No, they're really going to be mad here because this cost. Now, there's a second thing I want to tell your audience, because
Mhm.
your audience is you have this real military experience, not just simply interest. There's an operational indicator that I'll be saying more about here. I haven't said that much about. It's not secret or anything, but there's an operational indicator for how you would know if the public is actually turning against its regime. And that operational indicator is they will give information, targeting information of where their local leaders are. And that targeting information will come at a risk to their lives, of course. But that targeting information, if it is not coming here, if it comes, let's put it the other way, you will know it's coming because more leaders will be killed deeper down into the leadership infrastructure. So you will get not just the famous, you know how we in Iraq we did the 52 cards and so forth.
Hmm.
Yeah, not 52. There are thousands of leaders here in the Iran regime. In fact, probably for 92 million people, you're talking 1 in 8 work for the Iranian regime. 1 in 8 people, adults, work for the Iranian regime. You're talking about tens of thousands of leaders. We will take out all of them. We're not going to be picky. Okay. We're especially with our AI programs here. We're not going to be picky. So what that means, the fact that unless you see hundreds of leaders being killed here, where we're going to have and I'm sure Pete Hegseth and General Kane would give you the body counts if those were there. Here, that means that 911 information, it's just not coming. It's just not
Gotcha.
coming. And they got it. They know where their leaders are, just like you in Syracuse would know here where the local leaders are, where your mayor is, where all this is. You know this, and even deeper down, all the assistants to the mayor and so forth. That information is not flowing, and that would be the indicator that you're about to break. That you would be seeing a case that will challenge world history here. That's You're just not seeing that, and that's the
Hmm.
really missing indicator. And that's why this is probably going to go the way that history has always gone. It's not just because it's always been that way in history; it's because the details of what's occurring here fit perfectly.
You mentioned before, a looming problem post bombing.
So I want
What
to,
what
yeah, I
is
want
that?
to tee this up today, Scott, and maybe next time we can talk about it. So I didn't give you much warning about this, but this morning in the New York Times, I have a giant new piece, and it came out, and I wasn't sure it's the first piece to really lay out what the global consequences of this war. So far, it's all been about economics. The real global consequence is Iran is becoming the fourth center of world power. Iran is becoming the fourth center of world power. So before the war, we were talking about centers of world power: the United States, China, Russia. That was this multipolar world that's emerging. What's happening now, Scott, is thanks to Donald Trump's war. And that wouldn't have happened without it. And there's a whole lot more to say about this next time. So I'm just teeing this up
Hmm.
here. Is because of the 38 days of the war and Iran's strategy of selective military blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, where you kowtow to Iran, you go through. You don't, you get sunk. And just in the last 4 days, Kuwait didn't kowtow, their tanker got sunk. France kowtowed. President Macron, read my piece in the New York Times, you'll see, I'll explain this. His tanker got through, the first European tanker to go through in 38 days. This is also India. This is also happening in Asia, but it's also this isn't just tankers, as I will explain. Power is changing. Power relationships are changing. You are getting bandwagoning with Iran. You're getting new hierarchy emerging in the Persian Gulf. You're getting new power relationships in Asia. This is going to affect America's relative power in the world. That's important to explain, that power is relative. As one goes up, the other goes down. And then the final thing to leave your audience with, and I'm sure that many of them are going to, the New York Times to see this, is need to understand that those four power centers, they're not equally competing among themselves in a multipolar fluid world. You've got the US over here, and the rivals to the US are China, Russia, and Iran. And these three can increasingly cooperate now. Just one example. As I've just said, Iran now controls 20% of the world's oil in this highly, careful way. Well, Russia controls 11% of the world's oil. That means that Russia is not just giving tactical military targeting advice. It is plausible that there will be a future where Russia and Iran together take 30% of the world's oil off the market to crush and harm the American economy. China soaks up a lot of that because they want that. Yeah, you see right away, right?
Mhm.
So we've been, Donald Trump's been saying, let's have a world where we're gonna now have our spheres of influence. Okay. Well, that world may be coming fast, and that world is not going to be a world in which America is king. That's a world in which you just look at the possibilities here. And this is why I really thank the New York Times for going out a little bit on a limb here, because this, as you can see, this is like when I did the escalation trap, Scott. I published this stuff a few days before the war. Well, none of the media wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Mhm.
Now the stages have all happened. Get a
Weird how
little
that
bit.
happens.
What's that?
Is it weird how that happens?
Exactly. Well, and I'm not telling you I'm in love with the New York Times either. This is not about an issue of that. I'm just saying, got to give them a
Mhm.
little credit. They went out on a limb here because there's nobody else who's explained this yet. Okay, so this is really the first piece that has really laid this out. And when we get a chance to come back here, we can of course talk about all the specifics for sure of what's happened during the week. But next week, Scott, we can talk about it because there's a lot of issues here.
Yeah.
And in the Substack, I'm already publishing. I just did the big live briefing over the weekend here, and it was all about giving the heads up to the Substack, the community here. And then also they've asked questions, so I'm addressing. So we're trying to keep people ahead, not just respond to the current events here. And that's been my commitment to the Substack, is I'm going to keep trying to keep them several weeks, if not more, ahead, so they really see what's coming. And we'll also deal with the short term as well. But this is what I mean by doing real risk assessment. And this
Mhm.
is really, again, these are the consequences where, and people say, well, how are you seeing all this? Because I'm getting that question all the time. And I know it sounds simplistic, but if you too had done 20 years of modeling this war, and you're thinking about the stages, and you're getting those smart questions from these University of Chicago students here who have more than triple digit IQs, they're very, very, very smart. You are going to be forced to think, and that thinking is going to occur. And so these are this is why this is unfolding. And it's really why I've fought so hard to not heard happen in the first place. But now that it's there, this idea that we're just simply going to call the whole thing off here, I mean, we can, but then Iran has the fourth center of world power. It has all that nuclear material. And if they can have all those drones underground and we can't take those out, why exactly aren't they having cascades of centrifuges underground to fashion dot dot dot? I mean, if we
Yeah.
can't, again, this is the world here. So we've taken out their surface navy, okay, all right, but that's not actually stopping the
Mhm.
growth of a fourth center of world power.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to digging into that more with you next time. I know we're at time here. I will, for everyone listening, there will be a link to Professor's New York Times article in the show notes. So you can go look for it there. I'll go grab it right after this. But yeah, I'll tell you right now the question I'm going to ask you when we come back next week. John Mersheimer, I saw him this morning on Al Jazeera explicitly say that this is not changing the distribution of power in the world. It'll still be the
Yep.
US,
Yep,
China,
yeah,
and
John.
Russia.
Yeah, I'm John's first graduate student. He's probably not going to like it that I'm saying that that's the case. And the problem is that I've got a different. This is what happens. My graduate students don't all agree with me. It's just the way the world is. And our offices literally are right next to each other in Pick Hall. I mean, it's one of these. It's hard to believe we've known each other for 44 years, not just a little bit of time. 44 years. I respect John. He's the number
Mhm.
one person I respect. Does that mean I agree with him on everything? No, I don't. Does that mean I don't respect him? No, I respect him enormously here. But it's too important to then put this in
Mhm.
personal terms, even with John. This is about understanding what is really happening in the world. And as I just explained, you now have the possibility of Iran and Russia working together to take 30% of the world's oil off the market. Now, are they really not going to use that power? Is that really what's going to happen? We're going to have a power maximization theory that's going to say they're not going to maximize their power.
Yeah.
Now we're in deep. Now we're in, and then China, and I'm saying China is going to be working with this group as well. Now maybe it won't be a NATO war fighting alliance. I'm not going that far. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that just the structural pressure to maximize power for survival. Does that sound familiar? Okay,
Sounds
it's
like something
going
a structural realist would say.
is yeah, so I'm not abandoning structural realism. This is not a liberal theory or
Mhm.
something or other. Okay, this is power maximization 101. I'm driving the logic all the way through, and I'm taking seriously that Iran has got some power max strategies here, and they're doing it, and we're underestimating it. And then I think we're underestimating how that is going to change here. And I'm not saying they're a fourth center today, this instant. This is, I say, emerging. It's over the next few months, the next few years. Add nuclear weapons to this mix, you see. Just think about this. So, what exactly is the difference between Russia and Iran? I mean, Russia's got 170 million people, Iran 100. Russia doesn't have nuclear weapons now, of course. Iran doesn't. Well, but what once they start having 50, 60 nuclear weapons here, I mean, what exactly are these differences here? Russia controls 11%, Iran 20%. Iran's going to want to topple the UAE and Saudi Arabia and put their puppets in. Does that sound like Kyiv?
Mhm.
And I mean, I mean, why exactly is Iran not doing that exactly? Again, I'm just not quite getting that from a power maximization perspective. So anyway, I'm teeing up the issues here, but it's not to joust here. It's honestly because I think we're just so badly underestimating this war, and we're continuing to underestimate this war.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the show with us today.
Thank you very much, Scott, and I definitely look forward to coming back. Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. All right.